Now, as the craft enters your plane, a distortion occurs. Its actual structure is caught in a dilemma of form between transforming itself completely into Earth's particular camouflage pattern and retaining its original pattern. The earthly viewer attempts to correlate what he sees with what he supposedly knows or imagines possible in the universe. What he sees is something between a horse and a dog that resembles neither. The flying saucer retains what it can of its original structure and changes what it must. This accounts for many of the conflicting reports as to shape, size, and color. The few times the craft shoots off at right angles, it has managed to retain functions ordinary to its particular habitat. I do not believe you will have any saucer landings for quite a while, not physical landings in the usual sense of the word. These vehicles cannot stay on your plane for any length of time at all. The pressures that push against the saucer itself are tremendous. The struggle to be one thing or another is very great on any plane. To conform to the laws of a particular plane is a practical necessity, and at this time the flying saucer craft simply cannot afford to stray betwixt and between for any indefinite period. What they do is take quick glimpses of your plane and hold in mind that the saucer or cigar shape seen on your planet is a bastard form having little relation to the structure as it is at home base. At a later date, I may go into the inhabitants of those planes more thoroughly, but as it is, I am not very much acquainted with them myself. There are so many things you do not understand that I hope to explain to you. There are other things you do not understand that I cannot explain to you simply because they would be too alien now for your regular mode of thought. One note along these lines: a plane, and I'm using your term, I will try to think of a better one, is not necessarily a planet. A plane may be one planet, but a plane may also exist where no planet is. One planet may have several planes. Planes may also involve various aspects of apparent time. This particular matter being too difficult to go into right now, although I will continue it later. Planes can and do intermix without the knowledge of the inhabitants of the particular planes involved. I want to get away from the idea of a plane being a place. It may be in some cases, but it is not always. A plane may be a time. A plane, there, believe it or not, may be only one iota of vitality that seems to exist by itself. A plane is something apparently divided from the rest of the universe for a time and for a reason. A plane may cease to be. A plane may spring up where there was none. A plane is formed for entities as patterns for fulfillment on various levels. A plane is a climate conducive to the development of unique and particular capacities and achievements. A plane is an isolation of elements where each one is given the most possible space in which to function. Planets have been used as planes and used again as other planes. A plane is not a cosmic location. It is oftentimes practical that entities on their various personalities visit one plane before another. This does not necessarily mean that one plane must be visited before another. A certain succession is merely more useful for the entity as a whole. In other terms, you could say that an entity visits all planes simultaneously, as it is possible for you to visit a certain state, country, and city at one time. You might also visit the states of sorrow and joy almost simultaneously, and experience both emotions in heightened form because of the almost immediate contrast between them. In fact, the analogy of a plane with an emotional state is much more valid than that between a plane and a geographical state, particularly since emotional states take up no room. Chapter 22, The Future. Now you move into new areas of the self all of the time. The species is now entering such a phase, a period in which it will come more into its own. Mankind will be entering its own new house then, but the physical changes will be the result of interior ones and alterations in main lines of probabilities. Christian theology sees the end of the world in certain terms, with a grand God coming to reward the good and to punish the wicked. That system of belief allows for no other probability. Some see the end of the world coming as a greater disaster or envision man finally ruining his planet. Others see periods of peace and advance, and each probability will happen somewhere. However, many of my readers, or their offspring, will be involved in a new dimension of selfhood in which consciousness is fully explored and the potentials of the soul uncovered, at least to some extent. Human capabilities will be seen as what they are, and a great new period of development will occur in which all concepts of selfhood and reality will be literally seen as primitive superstition. The species will actually move into a new kind of selfhood. Theories of probabilities will be seen as practical, workable psychological facts, giving leeway and freedom to the individual, who will no longer feel at the mercy of external events, but will realize instead that he or she is their initiator. Now, you squeeze the great fruit of your selfhood into a tiny, uneasy pulp, unaware of the sweetness of its juices or the variety of its seasons. You look at the outsides of yourselves as if a peach were aware only of its skin. In the reality I foresee, however, people will become familiar with far greater aspects of themselves and bring these into actualization. They will be in touch with their own decisions as they make them. If they become ill, they will do so knowing they chose the condition in order to emphasize certain areas of development or to minimize others. They will be aware of their options consciously. That the great strength and resiliency of the body will be much better understood, not because medical science makes spectacular discoveries, though it will, but because the mind's alliance with the body will be seen more clearly. In this probability of which I speak, the species will begin to encounter the great challenge inherent in fulfilling the vast, untouched potential of the human body and mind. In that probable reality to which each of you can belong to some extent, each person will recognize his or her inherent power of action and decision and feel an individual sense of belonging with the physical world that springs up in response to individual desire and belief. But remember, you call this your universe and your reality, and it is indeed, for you form it. Within you also is the knowledge of other great experiments that are being tried, just as other probable systems are aware of the experiments you are involved with. I am speaking in your terms only, which means that to some extent I am hedging. But other civilizations have gone your route. Some have failed, but the inhabitants of some earths have succeeded very well. As you think of it, your future is not set. You can follow any road you choose, but unless you realize that as individuals you each form your own personal life and have a part in the mass creation of reality, there is much learning ahead for you. This is a lesson you are meant to fully understand within physical reality. You are meant to judge physical reality. You are meant to realize that it is a materialization of your thoughts and feelings and images, that the inner self forms that world. In your terms, you cannot be allowed to go into other dimensions until you have learned the great power of your thoughts and subjective feelings. So even when you think you destroy nothing. And when you think you kill nothing. When you imagine that you can annihilate a reality, you can only assault it as you know it. The reality itself will continue to exist. Because you cannot follow a thought, you wonder where it has gone. Has it fallen off some invisible cliff in your mind? But because you can no longer hold that thought in consciousness does not mean it no longer exists, that it does not have a reality of its own, for it does indeed. And if a world escapes you, if you cannot follow it and think it has been destroyed, then the same thing applies to the world as to the thought. It continues to live. Now, what I have said should inspire questions within you. Seth. Okay, let's see. Chapter 23, Atlantis. I'll begin that in the next session.